This is another multitasking scenario here. If you can see here behind me, those are all my vacuum chambers that need to go out this week. Well, actually, only 9 technically have to go out this week, but I am trying to be proactive and get caught up. My goal is to have every outstanding order, including those that were just ordered yesterday, out by the end of next week. So if you have been wondering where your vacuum chamber is, it's right there, and it will be in the mail as soon as humanly possible. Anyhow, let me get started on this. And right now, what I'm going to be working on is cleaning this off as much as possible. It seems like my video is acting a little wonky. Hey, Don, I think you're on there. Can you tell me how the video is looking over on your end? Hello? Yeah, how's the video look, Don? Am I looking choppy or anything? And somebody else is on there. Please give me a thumbs up. Let me know how it looks. Appreciate it. All right, so anyhow, let me get started on this. So actually, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about too. So I've got this writing on here. It is a bit choppy, huh? Okay. Let me see. Is it getting any better? But good. All right. Well, we'll go with it then. So PVC pipe is cheap pipe, even though the prices are going up. And that thumbnail, if you saw that before you clicked on to the live stream, that is what I just picked up yesterday from our local Ace Hardware store. And in order to keep my prices as low as possible, I had to order it like 50 at a time this time around because the prices are going up, and the only way I could keep the price the same was to buy that much. So this is really scary that I invested that much money into it, and I just hope that the demand will still be there. Otherwise, my husband's not going to be too pleased with me that I just spent all my profits from everything that we've just done the last month, and it's going to be sitting there. Hopefully, not in the truck too much longer. I tried. I'd hoped that I would get up early enough and that I could get all that put away, so I can use the truck to then deliver the packages that I'm going to be creating this afternoon. But I had a lot of other things to do this morning. I just didn't get to it. And now it's already like 85 degrees out there. I'm like, I'm just going to wait until the cool of the evening, or I will wait until tomorrow morning. We'll get up at 6 o'clock in the morning while it's still cool, and we'll get those PVC pipes put away. But in any case, it is as cheap as I can possibly make it here, but it comes with this writing on it. So I use acetone to clean that off. But even so, there's still going to be a little bit of acetone showing on there if it has some print on that section of pipe. Let me show you what that looks like. You know what? And I'm running low on acetone. That's going to be something else I need to buy here this week before I get to the next one. Next big amount. So that's what it looks like. If you can see that, you can kind of sort of see that still. But then the rest of it, we're going to put it in, going to wash it up. This is where my mother-in-law helps me. So all of this will be washed up, and you won't smell acetone. There will be a little bit of smell perhaps from the glue, depending on how quickly I ship it after I've glued this bottom piece on. This has actually been a couple days now, so I don't really smell it. But if you do smell any sort of like glue or whatever, just keep the lid off for a day or two, and that'll all air out. But the PVC glue that I put on there is rather pungent for the first couple of days. But anyhow, my husband was thinking, all right, well, how can we make this look nicer? You're going to have it in your kitchen. Is there something that we can do to make it look nicer? And he was suggesting paint, but paint takes time to dry, and it's an extra cost. And plus, when you put the lid on and off, that's going to scrape the paint. So I didn't really like that idea. But then came up with the idea of perhaps some contact paper. So this is removable wallpaper. Actually, this one it's a little textured, and this is the first one I put on. You can see there's a little bit of bubbling there that I wasn't too careful in putting it on there, but I think that would look really nice to have on your kitchen then instead of just a straight up pipe. So I've got a couple. I tried it with a couple different things. This was a wallpaper with removable. That's removable. It's got a sticky on the back, and then this is actually contact brand contact paper. Um, and this one you can see I didn't clean off the print, so it kind of shows through. It wouldn't show through if I'd washed it off like this, even though it's a thinner paper than the wallpaper is. So let me know in the comments if that's something that you would like as an add-on. It does take extra time to do that, but just a thought, an improvement. Another improvement that I'm working on is, well, what happens if you don't own a food saver? You like the marble look? Yeah, me too. If you don't have a food saver, then you've got to spend money on some alternative. You can use a vacuum pump for people who may have a vacuum press. That can be used to put on the hole that's on the top to suck out the air. You can also invest in something like this. This was, I think when I bought it, it was about $25. It's now gone up in price, but on Amazon, prices fluctuate. They go up and down. And it's battery operated, so you charge it up here, and then you just sounds like that. Actually, it's a lot quieter than the food saver. So if you've got other things going on in the house, one of the drawbacks of the food saver is that it's really loud, and when your kitchen is open to your living room and people are watching TV, they don't really appreciate the interruption of the food saver going off every couple minutes. But this is very quiet. You can listen to that. And but it does not work at the same time as charging. So you can do probably at least 4 or 5 vacuums before you probably need to charge it up again. I haven't actually tried that out, but I've done at least 4 or 5, and it's worked fine. So I know the minimum it would work for that. And it's got a rubber gasket on there, so it stays on there pretty good. Another option that you can do, and this is something that my brother invented this actually. So I have a ton of these. These are the bell ends of the long pipe. So you've got a long 10-foot pipe, and then you have this bell end. So then when you're using it for its intended purpose, which is a drain pipe, you stick the other pipe in there and you put the glue in there, and it goes in there. But anyhow, I have a whole bunch of these. That whole stack there are the ends of the pipes of all the other canisters that I made, and I haven't gotten rid of them. So I still have a lot of those. But anyhow, my brother came up with this ingenious idea that you glue the cap onto the bell end. You have this here. This is to be able to hold on to it basically with your feet, because what you're going to do is you put your canister inside and then you lift up and down on this. It's really hard to demonstrate. Because what it is going to do is I can't lift it up without my feet on it, without putting this up. So this little device here is like a one-way valve. So as you are lifting up, it draws the air out of the canister, and then as you push it back down and you force it down, this is going to pop up, expelling out all the air. So if you do that 4 or 5 times, then you produce that vacuum seal in the jar, and it'll seal your jar. Take enough air out there, it's going to form a seal. And you don't need anything extra. You don't need to purchase this. You don't need to purchase a food saver or a vacuum pump. It just takes a little bit of effort in terms of being able to pump it. As I said, it's really hard to open this up. So that's why I have this here, because basically I just sit down, put my feet on either side of this, and then I can pump up and down, and it works great. And I haven't had a problem. So long as it's something that could seal with this or the food saver, you will get a seal with this. And I'd love to hear your comments on that as well. This is obviously something I can't make as many of, because in a 10-foot pipe, I can make 10 of these types of canisters, but I'll only be able to make one of these. So in terms of pricing and whether there's a demand in there, I would really like to hear your thoughts on that as well. I don't have this on my Etsy store yet. I also don't have these options on there yet. I'd love to hear from you all what you think, what kind of add-on that would be for you. To let you know what my cost is, I got this particular roll of wallpaper at a yard sale for like $3 for the whole roll. And I got this contact paper brand new over at Dollar General, and that was like $3.50 plus tax. And I'm sure I could, get at least, 10, 15, 20 out of that. But of course, it's the time and everything of cutting it up. So I don't know, $1, $2, you let me know. Obviously, you can do it for yourself. You can just, if you've got some wallpaper lying around, just cut it to measure and put it around there, and then you've got decorations for your kitchen there. So anyhow, let me know what your thoughts are on that. I forgot to get my tablet. It's kind of like what I use to remind myself of the different topics that I want to cover. And I have, so basically throughout the day, I come across so many different articles and news events that I don't have time to make videos of every single one of them, but I want to keep track of it. So I will then share it to my Facebook group page, this Sweet Home California Facebook page. So you can kind of read over it at your leisure, and it serves then when I am doing these live streams that I can take a look at it and see what kind of things we want to talk about. So give me 1 second. I'm not doing a very good job at multitasking here right now, because I'm supposed to be cleaning these jars. All right. This is my old Kindle Fire here. So let me see if I can get into it. My groups. I appreciate you all coming on. I appreciate the likes. Thank you. Any comments? Comments really help me. Helps the channel grow. Okay, so first one up, this lovely lady here apparently has been charged with doing some shenanigans in Arizona. Now, when it initially came out, I think she was charged with 1 count of ballot tampering. In Arizona, it is illegal to harvest ballots, so you can't touch somebody else's ballot. It's supposed to go straight into the ballot box, and they got her supposedly on 1 count. Now it looks like it might be something bigger than that. So that article kind of explains that. I don't know if you saw my video from earlier, but I got a strike. I got it appealed, but I did have a strike that was initially put against my channel because of a video that I did on the Arizona audits back in October. So just to be on the safe side, just go on over to my Facebook page and take a look at that and tell me what you think on that over there on Facebook. Oh, by the way, I do have now a Truth Social account. Just the flow of getting things over there, I haven't quite figured out. Seems like everything is very easy, very geared towards sharing easily to Twitter and to Facebook. And it's just extra steps right now on doing Twitter. Plus, I'm on Android. And so Truth Social doesn't have an app on Android yet. So whenever I go on to Truth Social, it has to be through the web browser, which is, again, not as easy a workflow as it is on Facebook and Twitter. So for the time being, I'm still over there on Facebook and Twitter, and Facebook group. Sweet Home California is where I keep track of the different articles that I want to talk about. So the next thing up I want to talk about, this will take me a little bit more time, so I'll get back to my multitasking here, is the House Dems want to raise the limit for people purchasing semi-automatic rifle purchases and banning, quote, high-capacity magazines. And let me see if anybody has made any comments here that I missed. Hey, thank you, Dawn. I really appreciate your comments. So they want to raise the limit from 18 to 21. And the reason being, they say, well, 18-year-olds just aren't mature enough. Obviously, we've got laws on the books where you can't even you can't drink until you're 21. And yeah, but driving isn't a constitutional right, whereas owning a firearm is. And even though you can say, all right, well, you have to be 21 to drink, you can be 17 with a parent's permission. You can be 17 and be in the military and be given access and training for all this. Now, yes, maybe the typical 18-year-old doesn't have the training, but then maybe they do. And shouldn't it be up to an adult, someone who is of the age of majority, that can sign their name to things and be legally responsible for that and be charged as an adult for their actions? Shouldn't they also have all the rights that are afforded to someone under our Constitution? And in California, for instance, it's illegal. You have to be 21 to own a handgun. And I understand, the argument of why it's ridiculous. Because at 18, how many people come here from all over the country to try and make it big in LA, in Los Angeles? Well, LA is a very scary place to live in right now. There is so much crime going on. And you've got an 18-year-old who's away from home for the first time, don't know necessarily their neighbors, and you're putting them out here and it's completely defenseless. Now, it's already terribly difficult, and unfairly so, to get a CCW in most of California. And Los Angeles County specifically, it's been historically very difficult to get a CCW. Not so much in Kern County where I am, but even so, it took us 10 months for the paperwork to be processed. Now, I think right now most of that was because of COVID, and they just don't have the staff to process the paperwork, but it's still absolutely ridiculous. So in any case, even if you can't get a CCW, to be able to know that you're safe in your own home, in your own apartment, an 18-year-old living away from home should have that option, because that's what the Second Amendment is supposed to be for. It is not the state granting you that right. It is the state recognizing the right, and they are supposed to protect that right. It's not, again, that the state has granted you that right. That is a right granted to us by the Almighty. And that's how our Constitution was framed. And most other countries in the world aren't like that. Most countries in the world your rights are given by the state, by the country, and therefore your rights can be taken away by the government. Take Canada, for instance. So we've got Pelosi is putting forth this bill that she wants to do the same sort of thing that California, and that's why, when I talk about California crazy, that what starts in California very often gets spread throughout the country. And of course, Pelosi is a representative of San Francisco. She's from California. And that is what she is trying to do. She is trying to implement what it goes on in California. She is trying to spread that to the whole country by mandating that. At this point, she's just saying semi-automatic rifles, but what's the next step going to be? Because actually a lot more murders are committed with handguns than are committed with semi-automatic rifles. But back to the fact that this is a right granted. The right to self-defense is given to us by God, and the state, the country, should be there to protect that right. They don't grant it, therefore they should not be able to take it away. Canada is based completely different. They don't have a Bill of Rights like we have here in the United States. They do not have a constitutional right to free speech, and therefore, as we've seen, they have had a number of laws being passed against so-called um, hate speech, where it puts people in a position that they can quote the Bible and be charged with hate speech. Well, they also do not have a Second Amendment. They do not have a right to self-defense in Canada. And Trudeau, who his party is in power, so a lot of people that I've been listening to seem to think that this is going to happen. Even though he said that he is going to go through the legislature, this is not, I guess, an executive order, but he is pushing for legislation to ban all handguns and require a maximum, I think they already have a maximum magazine limit of 5 rounds. In California, for instance, it's 10 rounds, which is ridiculously small. High capacity is not 12 rounds. The standard capacity magazine in any other state, for instance, for an AR style rifle is, I think, 30. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments there. But I want to say that the military had 40 round magazines. I've been out now for, a couple decades, so I honestly don't remember, but I know that those magazines were a heck of a lot bigger than what we've got now in California, thanks to this, 10 round limit. But in Canada, it's 5. Well, criminals are cowards. They, if they know that you're armed, they're much less likely to even try and do anything with you. But once they're out there and they're attacking you, they normally do so in packs, at least one other person. And so anyhow, just being limited to 5 rounds, you miss a couple times because, of course, you're moving, the adrenaline and everything. Your ability to fight back is severely reduced. And again, the criminals aren't going to abide by that. Those magazines are out there. Those magazines can probably be 3D printed. They don't seem all that terribly complicated. But, and also I think Canada is calling for like mandatory buybacks of AR style weapons as well. And in all likelihood, it's going to get passed because Trudeau is part of the majority government right now. Whereas hopefully, the House, they have a bit more of a margin in the House than they do in the Senate. But in the Senate, there are more Democrat senators like Manchin and Sinema that are also not going to support this. So the chances of the U.S. version of these bills going through, of mandating the age limit of 21, the chances of that going through is very small, thankfully. But you've got to continue to encourage your elected representatives to make sure that they know your thoughts on this. Because once things get into law, you might be able to depend on the Supreme Court, depending on, what the makeup of the court is at the time, that they would honor your right. But things go so slowly in the Supreme Court. For instance, there's been laws trying to overturn, or there's been cases trying to overturn a number of different laws in California. One of them is we're supposed to have an answer on this session. So by the end of June, we should have an answer on some of California's crazy laws in regards to Second Amendment issues. But, it's going to be a nail-biter. In terms of, for instance, Roe v. Wade, that took over 50 years, and we still don't have an answer on that. Hopefully, the Supreme Court will do what is right and keep with what that leaked draft said. But there's no guarantee that it will. So it's best, obviously, to make sure that those laws don't get passed in the first place. So if you've got wishy-washy Republicans, or you've got, obviously, most Democrats are probably going to support it, take the moment to contact them and let them know that you do not support infringements of your rights, because no matter what our current occupant of the White House says, the Second Amendment was not for hunting. It was for self-defense. Hunting, of course, is a good thing, and people should have a right to hunt as well. But primarily, it's for self-defense. And one of the things that the left doesn't want to acknowledge is that even though, yes, we have horrible numbers of crime in this country that involve handguns, and it's absolutely horrible. But did you know that there are more murders committed with a knife? Do you know in Britain, you can't carry a knife? They've already disarmed their citizens. Not even their police officers have guns. So when you have those rare instances over there, because they have been very good at getting rid of guns, they are an island nation though, so it makes it a lot easier for them to try and control those things. But when they do have bad people that want to do bad things, and it still happens, then they've gone to knives. So now that's the next thing that the British government has outlawed. You cannot carry around a knife. If you buy one, because you can buy them still, to use at home, but you can't be just walking around with it. You need to be able to show them that you purchased that knife that day. So you better keep your receipt with you as you're traveling home with your knife in its packaging. So you leave it, safe at home. And that would probably be the next thing in Canada, because they're really going full in on trying to get rid of guns. Of course, they're saying if it fails, it'll be because the United States has more lax laws, and that's what Chicago, for instance, likes to say a lot. That the reason why Chicago has such high crime with guns in Chicago is because their neighboring states don't have the same laws. But I don't know if you've noticed, the neighboring states don't have the high criminal rate of using those weapons. So what is the difference? Why is Chicago so terrible and the neighboring states aren't? Might it have something to do with prosecuting the laws that are currently on the books to keep criminals in jail, to deter the crime in the first place? That would be my thought on that. We've got more than enough laws on the books right now. Exactly. More laws are not going to change anything. We have to enforce the laws that we already have. And I don't know if you know this, Don, but murder's already illegal. And that's definitely a good law to have. It's been one of those laws since, I don't know, thousands of years, right? It's been one of those laws, and people still break it. And with the spate of mass shootings that have been going on, it is absolutely horrible. But again, criminals are cowards, and they choose places to go where there are restrictions. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure they don't allow you to carry weapons in a hospital. They don't allow you to carry weapons even with a CCW in a school. You can't walk into a post office, even if you have a CCW. You cannot walk into a post office or other federal building with your legally registered handgun with a CCW. So those are all places that, even in states that have more permissive CCW laws, that bad guys are going to have some idea that they can do things without repercussion. And then if you add to that DAs that are soft on crime, then there really is very little deterrent. But Just what's been going on here lately, it's just a mental health crisis that we really need to address. We need to pray for these people, and we need to be there and support these people. And one thing that I would support is these juvenile records, these threats that kids make when they're 11, 10, 12, 14 years old. Those things are, as far as I can tell, they are sealed and nobody knows about them. So how can background checks be effective when they turn 18, when, it's not like they just came into existence at 18. They've got a history. For instance, in Uvalde, this kid had a history of doing bizarre things and being in trouble with the law, and yet he was still able to pass a background check. Now, according to my neighbor who works in a gun shop here in town, he said that in California, there's like 2 different background checks that they do. They have the federal background check, which is a series of questions that they ask, have you done this, that, or the other thing. And according to him, I don't know this for a fact, let me know in the comments if you have any information on this. That background check, which is the one that is required throughout the United States, is just a series of questions. It doesn't go anywhere. Now, I don't know if that's true everywhere, because he said in the same breath that the California background check does go to the Department of Justice, and it does turn up things. But he said that it's never come back with the nationally required background check. Nothing ever comes through from that, because it's just basically a bunch of questions that people can answer any way they want, and they don't actually check it. Now, in California, it might be that they don't actually check it because they know that they've got the Department of Justice background check that's required, and so they just don't put it through the system. Again, if you're from a different state and you're involved in legal firearm sales, let me know if you found that people have actually failed the nationally required background check or not. But in any case, the reason why Uvalde passed is because at 18, just a couple days after 18, anything that he might have done as a juvenile might not show up on that national background check. And of course, liar's going to lie. If someone who's willing to kill somebody is not going to have any compunctions against lying on a federal form. So in that regard, I would definitely support those kind of background checks, and also that a juvenile should not have threats of violence hidden from a background check. Yeah, it may not be cool to let the whole world know, but because kids can do stupid things when they're young, and it shouldn't follow them their whole life, especially if there isn't a conviction on it. It's just an arrest. But those are red flags that definitely should be looked at. I saw, I think it was Senator Scott from Florida, who also suggested, all right, well, don't infringe on an 18-year-old's right, but have their parents be present, because the parents are going to know more than anybody else what the maturity level of that 18-year-old is. For instance, my daughter is very mature. She is now going to be 22, but she joined the Army Reserves at 17, and I would trust her with a firearm. But on the other hand, there are kids that I know that are not mature at 18, that they don't have any sort of sense of responsibility, and they don't have trigger discipline, they don't have muzzle discipline. It could be all over the place and putting people in danger just because they haven't reached that maturity yet. But they may not even reach that maturity yet at 21 either. But maybe that transition period between 18 and 21, maybe that's a good solution, to have parents be involved in making sure that 18-year-old is ready for the responsibilities of having a firearm, but not to just blanket deny, because again, it's a right. It's not like driving or drinking. It is a right to self-defense, and everyone should have a right to self-defense. And there have been cases where kids have known how to operate a firearm, and that kids have saved their families using a firearm responsibly when an intruder has come into the house. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about too. So, yeah, we have apparently thousands of shootings per year, and every single one of them is tragic. But we do have 360 million people in this country. There are even more instances. There's a CDC report that was done under Obama, and it got very little play because it didn't say what the Obama administration wanted it to say. It talked about Alaska Prepper, I believe, had a video on this, that there are 10 times as many instances where a person either limited the damage that could have been done by a criminal or completely escaped harm for the very fact that they were armed. That the criminal, saw the weapon and said, all right, I'm out of here. And so nothing bad happened for the very fact that they were armed. And they also found that in regards to comparing somebody who had a firearm that they used in self-defense versus another means of self-defense, such as, those personal alarms or a taser or a baseball bat. What else could there be? Pepper spray. So all those other self-defense mechanisms, people who tried to utilize those against an attacker suffered more injuries than those that had a firearm that they used in self-defense. And really, that's what you need to be concerned about, is how does it affect the person who is being attacked, the victim? How did they fare? I'm not really too concerned with the fact that the assailant might get shot, because really they brought it on themselves. And it is tragic, but if more people realize that their actions had consequences, I really do believe we would have a change in the number of violent crimes. And if people really thought that they would suffer consequences, either at the hands of their victim or at the hands of the government when they get caught. But unfortunately, especially here in California, we don't have that. We don't have consequences, and therefore we have higher and higher crime rates. All right, so that's talking about Second Amendment here. Let's go on to our next topic. I need to figure out how to set this so it stays open for me. Yeah, the next one here is about is a report on AP. It says cyber agency says voting software vulnerabilities in some states. Don't want to talk too much about that. Again, the whole, not wanting to upset the people who make the rules here on this platform. But it seems odd to me that as is becoming more and more obvious that the Democrats are not going to do well, that they are allowed, AP is putting this out, allowed to be raising the question of whether or not the people picking process is secure. And in the article that AP put out, they were sure to start off with, this has never happened. We've never had actual breaches, but according to the cyber agency, breaches could happen, and they had a list of recommendations of things to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I think it kind of seems like it's a setup. It's a setup trying to say, all right, well, this has never happened before, but should the Democrats lose in the fall, it's because these vulnerabilities were there and the recommended actions did not take place. So anyhow, I am going to have to put a tarp over my PVC pipe out there. See, there's discoloring just a little bit. It's not as brilliant white, if you can see that. If you're just joining me, this is another alternative that you can do for your pipes, is put some removable wallpaper or some contact paper on that and pretty it up and make it match your kitchen's decor. I am asking for people's input. Let me know if that's something that you'd like to see me include as an add-on, and what do you think a fair price would be for the time and material to put that on there for you. Of course, if you've got contact paper at home, you're more than welcome to do that yourself and make it look all nice and pretty. But the thing is that these jars, these canisters, you know, they do come with some print on there, and even though I do my best at getting it off, it's just impossible to get it off completely. So having some decoration on that make it look nicer. All right, so the next thing up, yeah, so more crime. This is going back to the whole gun thing. So this reporter here was reporting on the high crime rates in Chicago. And if you can see that gentleman behind her there, I use that term very loosely. He has a kinetic device in his hand there that, you know, shoots out projectiles, and threatened both the reporter and the cameraman with that. Luckily, nothing happened. He left. I'm not sure if he stole anything from them, but you know, this is on live TV that this guy did that in Chicago. There is something wrong with our society. We are a society where we've got people taking out their video cameras and recording women getting assaulted on a subway rather than stepping in and actually stopping it. There was an incident that happened in New York, which is another state that has, and specifically the city, that has very strict gun laws. So of course the law-abiding do what they do, they law-abide, and they don't have the means to defend themselves. The criminal is going to do what they're going to do. They're criminals, they're going to break the law. But in a subway where you've got very fit men, there were, you know, the video, the person who was taking the video, you know, then panned around and you could see some of the other people that were in the car. And there was like some buff guys in there that they should have stepped up. What is wrong with people? Why did that not happen? Why did people just stand around? Well, why did trained, armed police officers not rush that door in Uvalde? I don't have an answer to that. Now, I've listened to Officer Tatum. He is a former police officer, and he is very adamant in support of them that, you know, they did what they needed to do. People who haven't been a police officer don't have room to talk. They were defunded. They did not have the ballistic covering, and that if those officers had gone towards that door without having the protective gear that they needed, all they would have done was added the body count without being able to take him out, and so it would have done no good. And he said that the Border Patrol agent that went in with the borrowed shotgun and reportedly had taken out the shooter. And I say reportedly on this because it seems like every day we get more information or we get retractions. You know, the story keeps changing. So I'm just going to say reportedly. This is to the best of my knowledge. If you have any updated information on what the story is today, let me know down below. But according to Officer Tatum, that Border Patrol agent with the borrowed shotgun did not go in alone. He went in with a team, and at that point they already had the ballistic shields that offered protection as he breached the door and was able to take out the shooter, and that they did not have that until that time, and that was the reason why things didn't happen before that. But I've also heard other people say, I listened to Steven Crowder's take on it, and he's like, well, it was a first floor school. It's not like it was a multi-story school where you couldn't get at the upper story where he might have been holed up. It was first floor. They had been already taking some children out of neighboring classrooms through the windows. One individual in a room can't cover both the door and the windows at the same time. So why did police officers not try and distract him with the door, and yet at the same time also um, attack um, through the windows? I don't know. I don't know. But if you're already in the room, so an attacker comes in, you're already engaged. You're already part of it. If you have a legally carried CCW on you, you can react, and you're saving yourself as well as, of course, saving others. There's an instance in, I believe it was West Virginia, where a woman legally carrying a CCW was able to save untold numbers of people when a man came back to a party that was happening in the neighborhood, for graduation. That this is the time, and he was speeding in the area, and he was approached, and instead of just taking it like a man and leaving and following the speed limit and not putting people in danger, he came back with an AR-15 style rifle and started shooting. Thankfully, he was not a good shot, and if he did hurt people, no one was killed in that incident except for the gunman, because there was a woman there that was legally carrying a CCW handgun in her purse, and she put an end to it. She stayed, along with several witnesses, for the police to come, and no charges are going to be pending against her, because that is a clear case of self-defense. But the thing is that she was already involved. She was already there. When you're not there, when you're not in danger, to step into danger on purpose goes against everything most people have ingrained in them. And police officers are people too. When I was in the Army, I was a military policewoman. I was an officer for the 10th Mountain Division, as well as the 212th and the 560th in Germany. If you're not already in danger, going into danger is just a lot harder. And that's just the way human psychology is. It happened in Florida. There was the case of the school resource officer who stayed outside waiting for people to come. And that was the case here in Uvalde as well. They stayed outside. Now, the person who did go in that's getting credit for this is the Border Patrol agent who had a daughter who is still unaccounted for. So what parents are willing to do, that kind of overcomes the whole self-preservation thing. But if you've got police officers that they know that they're endangering themselves, but they have no defenses, they have no, that guy shoots at them, they've got nothing to stop it. They don't have anything that's going to stop a 5.56 round. Normal body armor that police officers may wear, that you may see them wear around normally, is not capable of stopping a 5.56 round. You need something a lot stronger than what you might wear on a daily basis. They were waiting for that to come. It came from 70 miles away with the federal marshals, and that's what they used to go in there. So that really, I think, argues for the case of allowing responsible individuals, not necessarily teachers, but there are other administrators and things that are in a school, that they should have weapons on them. Because, again, they're already going to be in the classroom. If something were to happen, they're already there. And also just the fact of potential bad guys knowing that there are armed people on campus is going to be a deterrent. But anyhow, they definitely need to do more training, and I think that we need to make weapons more legal weapons more accessible, more prevalent, not less. The other thing I want to talk about. So, have you seen Top Gun? I got to see it twice. And the second time around, we got to see it in what they call D-Box. Anybody hear of D-Box before? I'd never heard of it until we went. And what the D-Box does is it kind of makes you feel like you're there. So in a movie like Top Gun, where you get to where the guys are flying around and jets and everything. The seat that you sit in kind of will jiggle around and vibrate and make you kind of feel like you're more in the action. And when I got the tickets, only select seats have that feature. And one of the seats that was available was F-14. So my husband, who works for Lockheed, and they make the F-14, and they use the F-14 in the film. He got to sit in seat F-14, so that was really cool. But the reason why I think it did so well is because it is a pro-America patriotic film, and it wasn't woke. Not only was it not woke, even though they had women pilots, but they didn't have that in the 80s, but now they do have women fighter pilots, and they had women fighter pilots in this, but they didn't make a big deal out of, she's able to do this or anything. It was just an accepted thing, not a political statement. But a political statement that they did do was there was rumor going around that they were going to edit out the Taiwanese flag that was on Maverick's jacket. It was the same jacket that he used in the first film, and so to change the flags that were on there, if they accepted it the first time around, to change it afterwards, that obviously was going to be seen as capitulation to just appease the Chinese, which, of course, as Americans, that's totally, completely against the whole Maverick idea in our stand of being independent and not having other countries tell us what to do. But in any case, they were talking about potentially editing that out, but they didn't. They stood firm, and so I'm hoping that finally the Hollywood elites are seeing, what? When you do pro-American films, we're going to reward you. This movie broke all box office records with, I think, $156 million for their opening. And I think the previous record was somewhere like in the 60 millions. So Hollywood, hear us, okay? Keep going with the pro-America, patriotic, doing what's right, because that's, being a maverick, and that's what this is all about, is that, you can break some rules, but you break the rules, and we admire it when it's done in order to help others. And I think that's why this movie did so well. Appreciate you all being with me. Those of you that are still with me, I appreciate it. Please let me know any other comments here. I'm going to take a look here in a moment. In case you are just joining, I am in the middle. You wonder, what is she doing? I'm multitasking. That's what I do. So I'm cleaning off my canisters here. I have a whole bunch that I want to get out. My goal is to be completely caught up with all the orders that I have been so blessed to receive thanks to Alaska Prepper's review of my product a few weeks ago. I just got way more orders than I had ever in my wildest dreams anticipated. So, but I'm getting my processes down. As I said, I am getting my mother-in-law to help me out with doing some of the things that she can do with once I get all these made and cleaned off here with the acetone, then she helps me with cleaning them up in the sink and making sure that they're ready for use. But my next aim here is I'm going to be giving one of these to the Economic Ninja. So he was another YouTuber that I've been able to interact with, previously. With when I went to the People's Convoy in Atalanto is when I actually got to meet him face to face, and he was so gracious and kind and allowed me to do an interview with him there on the spot. He also agreed to come on my channel and help me out with that, and it was just a real thrill. He's just full of positive energy, and so is Alaska Prepper, just full of positive energy, where they really want to bring the best out of people and encourage you to prepare, because guess what? Things are happening that we need to prepare for. But both of those channels do it in such a way that you don't feel despair after watching their videos, and That's definitely something I want to emulate as well. And I hope that when I'm sharing some of these stories, that I hope you feel the way that I do when I'm watching, them, that I want you to be filled with hope. God is in control, and we always need to remember that. And it's something that my husband just started doing today, and I hope we continue doing that, is he just woke up and he said, "Today is the day." I'm like, "Today is the day." And of course, it immediately brought to mind, "Today is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad." And so that's what I said to him. I'm like, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, he says, "Today is the day." And I'm like, "That the Lord has made." And he enjoyed that too. The fact that I knew immediately what he's referring to. And he's said that then to me a couple times since when he's called me. He checks in every couple hours or so, and take a break from work. And I want you to remember that as well. Today is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad. That even though we do have a lot of trials and tribulations, even though nothing that is evil is ever the intention of God, God has given us free will, and because of that, bad things happen. But because there is a God, because there is a loving God, he can work all things to the good of those who love and trust in him. And that's another favorite Bible verse of mine. But because I'm Catholic, we know the Bible, we just don't have the verses memorized, so I can't recall exactly which verse that is. If you know, comment down in the description below. But it's one of my favorite verses. I should have it memorized. I'm just not very good at that part. So, for instance, tragedies have a tendency to bring people together. And yes, it is tragic when there is a loss of life. It's tragic when people lose their homes because of a horrible economy. But this earth, this is not our home. This is just a place that we're passing through. And however terrible different events may be here, God is sovereign, and it's nothing compared to the joy of eternity in heaven. And if terrible tragedies happen here on earth, but it brings people together, and it brings people to turn their life around, because there is such a thing as what do you call it? Like when you realize your own mortality, that you then get up off the couch and you do something. When you realize how short life is, you then reach out to people that you should have been with all along, and either seek forgiveness, heal relationships, step up and be the man or the woman that God intends you to be. And so I hope that even in the midst of all the terrible things that are going on, that you just focus on God, and you rely on him. But you know what? For those that think that prepping is not biblical, go reread your Bible and the Old Testament. There are so many instances where, God does want us to do something. And so it's not just a matter of, all right, God's just going to provide everything. God wants us to interact with him. God wants us to pray for others. Paul says many times in the Bible, pray for me, pray for me. And there are many times in the Bible where, like, for instance, Joseph, interpreted dreams and interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, and he saw Pharaoh's dreams as indicating, for instance, that there were going to be 7 years of plenty and then followed by 7 years of famine. And so with that knowledge, he was able to be a blessing not only to all of Egypt, but to the countries around Egypt as well, because they had stored up the food. They had prepared for what was to come. Here in America, we have strategic oil reserves. Don't know exactly how much all that is, especially now since we are using it on a daily basis to try and bring the prices down instead of, increasing supply. But we don't have strategic food reserves. We don't have these huge grains. So it is up to the individuals. It is up to you. It's up to me that we need to prepare for ourselves and not be a burden to the government. Because you know what? The government is not has no duty to act. There's another article on my list of things here from the Facebook group, Sweet Home California Facebook group. Be sure to watch that, where it says that the Uvalde police officers may not face any sort of criminal liability because they don't have what the Supreme Court calls a duty to act. There have been several other court cases that reached the Supreme Court that are precedents for this. And that is something, again, goes back to why we need to claim our Second Amendment rights to defend ourselves. And we need to act responsibly in preparing with having food on hand, so that, yes, it's great if there are nonprofits out there that are running food pantries to be able to help people. It's great if the government goes out, but the government doesn't have the food. The government is only, any food that they have, they've only gotten from taking it from somewhere else. And they don't have strategic grain reserves. The wheat, when we have a bad harvest, is not going to be able to be supplemented by the government. It's not going to be there. So make sure that you are stocking up and you are learning how to preserve things. And somebody asked that they just came in, what am I making? These are vacuum chambers. And the vacuum chamber has a little hole in here that you can use this is a Food Saver brand little pump that you can use to vacuum out the air, or you can use a Food Saver that's got the hose accessory in it. And you stick a mason jar or any other type of jar. The benefit of this is that it doesn't need to be a standard regular mouth or wide mouth jar. Like, these are things that are available from Food Saver, and I think there are some off brands now that are available. But it only works with the 2-part lids. It doesn't work with like an easy on, easy off lid here. It only works, these only work with standard regular wide mouth, the 2-part lids that have the little lip. Otherwise it's not gonna fit on there. So if you like it like this, you just put it on there, just so it's engaging there a little bit. If you can hear that, as soon as it, where I have to crank out, I stop, so I don't go that far. You stick it in there. You got your lid, put the lid on. And this particular version, I have my little upgrade there with the removable wallpaper, so it makes it look nice and pretty, because what I'm working on right now is clearing off the print that normally comes on PVC pipe, and I have that off. All right, but you can still see it, and so you have this in your kitchen. That's about as clean as I'm going to be able to get it, but you can make it look nicer if you put some contact paper on there. And so I was asking for feedback if people thought that would be a value added sort of thing, if you want to pay an extra $1, $2 or whatever, if you think whatever you think is fair. Or of course you can do it yourself at home. Of course you can make these yourself at home as well, but it does take quite a number of pieces of different equipment and to do that safely. So that's why I'm offering it, and people have been responding well to it. So anyhow, if you use this, put it on there, and you can hear that. It is sucking the air out of the chamber. And I do that for right around 20 seconds or so. I haven't been counting, so I don't know how far along I am. All right, let's see if that's enough. And I do have a version of this that has a handle, because this can be a little difficult to open. All right. All right. And then that's sealed. I didn't think I'd do that long enough, but in any case, dehydrated bananas are really good. You got dehydrated bananas and apples and things. So anyhow, that is what I'm making to answer that person's question. They only work with jars that are less than 4 inches in diameter. So people have asked about, well, what about the half-gallon jars? These are ball jars, and they don't fit in the chamber. Won't fit. So I made something. This is something else that I'd like to have your feedback on. I used a heat gun to kind of form it to be more square. So it will fit on top like that and form a seal. Again, if you want to do a 2-part lid, these will work fine on the standard one because this is standard. But if you like the type of lid like that, then you can use this. Let me see if I can get this to work better. These particular lids I don't use anymore because it's got that print on there. And I don't know if you noticed, but this thing is too big. So it's on the print, so I don't think I got a very good seal on that. But I don't use these particular lids anymore because of that. I use them for the bottoms. And then I have a different type of lid that I use for the tops. As you can see, that's all nice and smooth there. And they also fit tighter on there. All right, so let's see how this works. Now, I did try and see if there are other options that are available out there that might be more economical. Because this little doohickey here, when I bought it, it was about $25. But now, Food Saver is, the last time I looked, was actually a couple weeks ago, it was $40. That's not to say it's still $40 because Amazon prices fluctuate quite a bit. But I wanted to see if there was anything cheaper. I can tell you this, though. This little doohickey will not work. To answer your question, Elizabeth, it is only for dehydrated foods. It will not work to preserve indefinitely shelf-stable foods that would normally have to be pressure canned or water bath canned. But anytime that you remove oxygen from the food, it's going to make it last longer because the oxygen that everything uses to grow. So you can, if you can something and you opened it up and you put it in the refrigerator, if you put it through the vacuum sealing process, stick it back in the refrigerator, it will last longer than if you just put it in the refrigerator without doing the vacuum seal. All right, so let's see if that worked for me. Of course, I'm live, so it didn't work for me. I have been using this quite a bit, though. So again, these things, it's battery operated, and it may just be that the battery is dying on me on that. I should have had that recharged before I started it. But in any case, again, this is something that you can make for yourself with a heat gun, and then you just kind of press that onto your jar, and then it kind of forces it away. And then I put a rubber gasket, the same material that I have for the lid, I put in there. All right, but this definitely will not work. I've tried so many different ways. I even put like the neoprene around there again to try and make a good seal, but I couldn't get it to work at all. Everything else worked fine when I, was testing it. It just didn't work, now that I'm live. Okay, let me see where I am here. And these things are available. If you take a look at any of my past videos and search for vacuum chamber, there should be a link if you are interested in purchasing one from me. All my current orders should be out by the end of next week. I was very blessed to have Alaska Pepper do a review of it, which gave me more orders than I ever dreamed of having at one time. And if you saw the thumbnail before you came in here, you saw a thumbnail of a whole bunch of pipe. That's 50 10-foot PVC pipes that the prices have gone up. And so the only way that I could keep the price the same was if I invested in 50 of those pipes at the same time, so that my source of where I got it from, they get a discount from their distributor, so then they can pass on a discount to me. But when I first started buying those pipes, they were only about $18, and that was just buying one at a time. They're now $29 a piece, which is crazy if I bought it one at a time. But because I bought 50 at a time, I was able to get my price down to, I think he charged me $22. So again, a lot more than it was back in August when I started making these. But if at all possible, I don't want to raise my prices. Though it is a lot of work making these. I don't know if you can tell. All right, let me see if there are any other comments and remarks that I might have missed while I was doing stuff. Okay, live chat. All messages visible. Let me see. Excuse me. Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate your comment. Hello, everyone. Good ventilation in that room. Yes, I do. It's 16-foot high ceilings, and it's open along the top into my husband's room as well. But I think I'm getting used to the fumes, so it doesn't affect me as much. Anyhow, yeah, acetone is definitely something. It's not as bad though, honestly, as the glue. When I'm doing the glue, I have to have the doors open because the glue is just way too much. But the acetone at this point doesn't really affect me, at least not for another 20 years or so. All right, let me see what else was next here on things I wanted to talk about. And for those of you that are still with me, I can't believe I've been doing this for an hour and 10 minutes. Let's see. Yeah, so that was the next thing I was going to talk about, was that Uvalde had no duty to act. So if you want to read the whole article on that, it talks about the Supreme Court saying that in previous precedences that they're unlikely to face civil liability for failing to rush in because the government does not have a duty to act to protect you. Okay? They just don't. And that has been upheld a couple different times. The next article was Senator Rick talking about how you could flag irresponsible 18-year-olds from buying guns, not necessarily do a blanket prohibition against that, but allow 18-year-olds to buy guns, say, with parental consent, because the parents are going to know them better than anybody else. And the way that things are right now, where government seal juvenile records, then how on earth is a background check going to pick up the fact that the Uvalde shooter was maybe arrested for making a threat when he was 13 years old? We don't know. Apparently there were two of them, a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old in 2018, that were arrested for making threats of shooting people and apparently had lists. But as to whether or not it was the shooter that happened last week, we don't know, because guess what? Those records are sealed and we don't know who those people were. And the fact that there were two of them in 2018 is definitely cause for concern, because we don't know who they were. Is one already taken care of? Is there another one out there? Or do we have two other people out there that may still be a danger to the community? Those sorts of things, I do believe, and I do agree that those should be made public. And for the safety of everybody else, should have restrictions on their rights placed, because obviously that's, at age 13, 14, you should know better. You should definitely know better. Let's see what's next. Oh, here's something interesting. Biden White House sees mass exodus of black staffers, with some sounding the alarm on workplace issues. I thought they were all about putting certain people ahead of others based entirely on what their color is. Apparently, once you get into it, it's not necessarily the way that it seems. Let's see, we also have on there that the Uvalde school police chief, the person who made the decision not to rush the room before they had all the tactical gear that they needed to safely go in there, was elected to the city council. And he has now been sworn in as a city councilman. He's going to retain his position as the school police chief. And I just can't even imagine. Again, I can't second guess the police. I wasn't there. If you listen to Officer Tatum, he is very vocal about his support for the police. And honestly, I can't make a decision on this because, or a statement on it, because not only was I not there, but everything that we're being told seems to change every other day. You know, was the door propped open? The door was not propped open. The door had been open, but then the door was closed by that same teacher, but it didn't lock behind her. And all terrible. I just can't. I'm glad that they're not naming that teacher, because obviously that is something, whether the door was propped open or it wasn't propped open and just failed to lock. In either case, that is an accident. It was not. I can't believe that would be an intentional thing. And for her, and she's going to live with that her entire life. The last thing she needs is to have the entire world knowing that. It's just absolutely tragic. I can't even imagine what she must be going through. Of course, you know, with the parents of the kids that suffered, it's just terrible. Let me see. Let's see. There is an Epoch Times article again talking about the events from November of 2020, saying that apparently there are upwards of 20,000 invalid people picking papers that should have been invalid, because according to the U.S. Postal Service, they were delivered after the deadline. And would that have made a difference? Obviously, we don't know who was selected, or who the person voted for in those particular cases. But would it have made a difference? We have no idea. But that article is in there. So things are still being talked about on there. And of course, we've got who is it, Michael Sussman? I think it's Michael. Anyhow, last name is Sussman. The first trial, I'm not sure, maybe a second trial for Durham. I think there was a plea bargain the first time around, so maybe that doesn't count. So this might be the actual first trial of the Durham indictments. And this was the case where Michael Sussman had claimed that he was not working on behalf of anybody in one statement, but then in another statement he said he was working on behalf of someone when he was specifically asked. But this is tried in D.C., where some 93% of the vote in D.C. went to the Democrats. So how difficult would it be to get someone to go against that? I'm not sure, no matter what evidence is provided. And so, of course, his opinion is that the system is corrupt. Maybe not. But there is another trial coming up, and this one's going to be in Virginia, and this one is going to be another case of I think telling falsehoods to FBI officials, and that one's supposed to be starting up soon. And apparently Durham has added some more indictments to that particular case. I think this gentleman that is going to be tried next is a Russian national. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. All right, here's another one here. Supreme Court temporarily blocks the Texas social media anti-censorship law. So this has already been blocked. The Florida law had already been blocked, where there were both Texas and Florida were aiming to protect their citizens' First Amendment rights, that there needed to be additional safeguards when a social media platform wants to deplatform or censor their participants. And the Florida law had already been stayed by a district level federal court, and now this one is at the Supreme Court, where it's just issuing a temporary block. So this is not where they hear all the whys and wherefore arguments. This is just like something quick that they can do while the case is going through the different levels. I'm not sure if this case was actually heard yet, and it's going to be decided before the term ends in June, or if this is something that they're not going to hear until the fall. If you know, let me know in the comments below. They didn't talk about that in this particular article that I could see, but they issued, and it was a 5-4 decision, but it wasn't what you might think. It wasn't, because obviously, you know, this is most conservatives would be in favor of protecting free speech. So there were 3 so-called conservative justices that voted on this, I believe, with 2 liberal in order to make the majority. And then for the, nope, strike that. There's 2 conservatives and 3 liberals. And then on the opposing side, it was 3 of the conservatives that voted that they did not want to block the Texas law, and they were joined by 1 of the liberals. So that was a really interesting breakdown there, that they actually had a liberal vote on the side of upholding the Texas law. Interesting. Let's see. Oh, and here's another one about people picking processes. This one says, alleged voter fraud leads to overturned result in local California election. This was in Compton. It was a very small election where it was for, I think, a city councilman seat in Compton. And we're talking about numbers of like 857, 854, something like that. But it was just a matter of a couple votes that made the difference. And the person was the incumbent that wound up, that was found guilty of this. And so he was stripped of his position, and the challenger has been sworn in, or will be sworn in, as his replacement. But apparently the allegation and the findings were that the incumbent, in order to keep his seat, was encouraging people who are outside the district. If you're outside that, Compton, you can't vote, obviously, for that particular councilman. So they were outside of the appropriate district, and they voted for him, and that's what made the difference. So obviously those were not legitimate people picking processes there. Next article here I have up was about the Taiwanese cheer when they see that on the Top Gun Maverick that they did not take out the Taiwan flag after they were alleging that it was going to be removed in order to play to a Chinese audience. Apparently China only allows some 30 some odd foreign American films to be played to the over 1 billion people that are in China, which is obviously a huge market that money-grubbing people that have no principles want to play to. So that was the reason behind the allegation that they were going to remove the Taiwan flag, which was part of his jacket back in the 1980s when we really didn't care what China had to say. But now that we do, or some do, they were going to take it off in order to try and placate China. Well, I'm so glad that they didn't. I'm also really glad that I didn't even remember this controversy when we went to go see it initially. Otherwise, I might have been like, maybe not go see it. But I'm really glad. Anyhow, they did not take it out, so that's good. Governor of New Mexico is demanding that Biden pay for 100% of the wildfire damages after a revelation that his administration is the one that started the mega fire. So, one of the things that Trump was trying to say when he was in office about, for instance, California fires, is that not enough is done to preempt these huge fires that happen because you have the electric company with their transformers and their wires just simply existing in a forest, that they can cause wildfires because there's so much underbrush and undergrowth and tree branches aren't held back. And so when we have these high winds, these fires happen. And so Trump was saying that we needed to do more to prevent these. Well, apparently Biden, messes up everything. He takes an idea and he messes it up. So apparently they're trying to do some prevention where they have, quote, controlled burns that would then not lead to these mega burns. Well, apparently they didn't make sure that their controlled burn was completely put out. They all went home and the thing flared up again and was totally uncontrolled, because at that point they thought everything was done. And I think over 500 homes, it said, were damaged. So yes, obviously the federal government needs to help with that. See what else is next. Oh yeah. So in the whole going back to 2A stuff, talking about Biden was saying that we don't need 9mm. That well, the next size smaller than that is going to be like a 38, which is only a little bit smaller. But then below that, you've got 32, which is not very prevalent. You have 30, and then you have 22. So 22 is going to be the next most prevalent thing. 38s are kind of hard to find. The 32s and the 30s are even harder to find. But 9mm are very prevalent and are really good for self-defense. The military, that's what I carried when I was in the military. We had a 9mm. The other option then being these 22s. Well, 22s, they're so underpowered that you really don't even need an ear protection. You're at the range or whatever. It hardly makes any noise at all in terms of like whether or not you need ear protection. But they're very small projectiles, and Biden said when he was asked about it, he said that a surgeon told him, well, if you're shot with a 22, it does very little damage, and the surgeon can get that bullet out and they can save the lung. Whereas if it is a 9mm, then it will blow the lung out the person's back. It's not going. I think he's confusing the 5.56 round. Yes, a 5.56 round is going to do that kind of damage. A 9mm, yes, it's going to cause damage, especially if you have a hollow point. But it is not going to blow the lung out the back of the person's back. But the problem with the 22 is that it doesn't do enough damage, especially when you have states that have five gun magazines or 10 round magazines. A 22, you might need to use every single one of those rounds to stop somebody who is high on drugs from continuing to come after you, because even though, yes, eventually it will start affecting them, because it does so little damage, if it hits a bone, it may not even get into any innards. The person who is being attacked by such a person is still going to be in danger, even if they empty their full clip and every single shot hits. And honestly, in a situation where it's in self-defense and a person is being attacked by an assailant who is on drugs, and maybe there's even one or more than one of them that are on drugs, really motivated to be after you because they need their next fix. Oh my goodness, a 22 is not going to do it. And I'm not really concerned about the repair at that point. They're the ones that are attacking the victim. And if you don't have the firepower that you need to stop it, then the victim is going to be the one that is going to end up in the hospital or deceased because they didn't have what they needed. And again, the bad guys are not going to be like, oh, well, Biden said I shouldn't use a 9mm. I'll use a 22. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Let me see if we have any other comments here. Yes. T-Long, yes, the story keeps changing. There is a lot more to it. And I just feel for everybody that is involved. Everybody that is involved in Uvalde is going to be changed. Their lives are changed forever. And I hope that everyone gets the help that they need, and that God can work things to good. And I just hope that we'll see that. Anyhow, I've got a whole bunch more I've got to do here. It's already been an hour and a half. I really appreciate everybody's sticking with me in your comments, and I will talk